Okay, I think this could be a little bit rough. I will stumble quite a lot, but I'm in a way too good of a mood to try to get it right today. Because it's also a device that is so dated that it doesn't really matter all that much, but you will get all the information, maybe even get some fun out of it. Because what I'm going to review today is the ZUK Z2 Pro. A phone that 1 year ago, more than a year ago when it was released, was a flagship. Now it costs around $280 or 240 euros. And I wanted to see how good a phone that was last year's flagship is today at this price point, because I heard so much good things about it when it was released and so much later in terms of good bang for buck that I just wanted to find it out. And to be honest, when Banggood asked me to choose something, I didn't really find anything that I haven't reviewed already, or it simply wasn't available. So let's see what I think of it. So first thing, design and build quality, and I want to start off with a size comparison because we have 5.2 inches here on the ZUK Z2 Pro and 5.15 on the Xiaomi Mi 6, which is a current flagship. And as you can see, yes, it is a little bit taller, it is a little bit wider and also thicker, but considering that and that this is quite cheap, I have to say definitely nice compact size, because especially the bezels on the sides are absolutely moderate, and there's pretty much also, as you can see, no black border, which is something a lot of people will like. Now, the design itself is a little bit weird because it feels like this white part is actually just kind of slapped onto, at least because, as you can see, a quite hard transition from the nice sides, because what I like is very grippy sides. I also like the grippy back, and this actually doesn't attract so many fingerprints, especially on the white one. You don't see them, and it feels good, feels solid, nothing creaks. Buttons also great tactile feedback, they feel very well. And you have, of course, even double tap to wake it, so you don't need the power button, even though I have to say it's placed absolutely great, same as for the volume rocker. And I like that we have a nice transition here of the curve on the sides towards the back. And even though you feel a little bit of a edge here due to the beveled edges from the front to the sides, I gotta say it feels a little bit edgy but also round at the same time, but it feels very secure in the hand, and the same also therefore goes for the one-hand usability, because I can reach everything very nice. And what I also like is actually the fingerprint reader, because we don't have capacitive buttons, and all you have to use for the navigation is this one button, because if you just hold it, of course, it will unlock the device. You don't need to press, but usually if you just press, it will unlock every time, because it's actually a quite solid one. It's not the fastest unlock, as you can see. It takes a little bit of time, but usually it's very reliable, and what I usually do is actually press it, because then it unlocks anytime. A tap is for back, and if you double press, you get to the recent apps. I liked it because you can do everything just from just one place, and you don't have to stretch awkwardly. So this solution is fine. On the front, we also have a notification LED, and otherwise on the back we have the LEDs for the camera, and of course a little bit of a protruding camera, pretty much not really existent. Then the microphone, SD card and SIM card slot. On the bottom, USB Type-C, the speaker on the right, mic once again, and the headphone jack. So overall, I have to say, even for these days standards, this is still a compact phone, very well built. It looks kind of nice. It feels a little bit different due to those weird edges and design aspects. With the curve though and the sides, it feels super nice in the hand. I just have to give it to that. Now, what do I have to say about the display? If you check that one, we can see in the color options, which is quite nice, we have color temperature control, warm, standard and cool, and also natural and strong for the saturation. As you can also see though already, it is an AMOLED display, and therefore we see some flickering, which you won't see though in reality, so not a problem. Maximum brightness is what I measured, 580 lux, but this is on an AMOLED display and actually not quite the same as on an IPS display, because for an AMOLED you would need like more than 700 to get something good out of it, at least with what I measure. And that's why I would say sunlight readability is good, but not really much more. But the display itself, even though it's just 1080p due to being AMOLED, we have nice vibrant colors, we have a perfect black, white point is set right, and as you can even see, colors look, even on the strongest mode, not overly saturated. And if you want it a little bit more natural, just change it to that setting. But I have to say, viewing angles are nice, and overall, even in 2017, even though this is so quite a little bit of a dated screen, it is still a lovely display and absolutely easily very good, no matter what you would expect. Now, what about the speaker? I am not the biggest fan of the speaker. First of all, it could be louder. It also does a little bit of some crackling at the higher end of the volume, but the quality otherwise, the sound signature is good because it sounds a little bit more full and rich instead of thin, but it crackles a little bit, so it distorts just a little bit at the end, and it's not really super loud, but I would say it's almost good. So okay, for sure. Headphone jack is also, I would say, almost good because it is a little bit better than the average, but not really much more, but it's fine, it's fine. Now, what about the performance? So double tap is a little bit of a slower pace to actually get, in my opinion, multitasking done. I would wish for, like for example, what Meizu does with just a swipe from the bottom, but as you can see here, this opens the quick settings, but I'll get into that later. Now, app launch times, I have to say, are absolutely nice, and we actually have, in terms of performance, an overclock mode where you can just push the CPU to higher limits, but I don't think that's necessary because as it performs, the 820 is so nicely optimized that you don't really need it, because as you can see here, also browsing super smooth, and due to the AMOLED display it also feels very fluid, and the browsing experience is at the top, and we aren't all that far off from an A35. Yes, there is a difference here, some little bit of jitteriness or some small or micro lags, but in most cases it performs really nice. What I've noticed though is that the scrolling is a little bit tweaked, because sometimes if I just hold it like this, it makes this little bit of different behavior, because a small flick and you don't always get the same consistent scrolling. I think if you maybe install a different custom ROM that is more stock, you wouldn't have this issue, but it's something that you have to get used to. I personally don't like it, and that alone for me is a reason that I would switch to a custom ROM. But the performance on its own, as you can see, it is smooth. Just as you can see here, the scrolling behavior is a little bit different. But it performs absolutely nice. Smooth. Yes, a little bit lag, because I've noticed that Snapdragon 820 and 821 devices, no matter how good performing they were, they had some little bit of some micro jitteriness. If you care about that or not, I don't really know. Like I said, multitasking is capable, as you can see here, but the animation just makes, or the double tap makes things a little bit slower. But otherwise it's fine. I don't need to go into gaming, it's totally fine. Even these days the 820 with the good GPU can perform very well. Now, let's get into the battery life. A full charge takes about 1 hour and 45, totally fine, even these days. I think it was 9% or 10% for an hour of YouTube, that's also above average, so good as well. Battery life, I can't really judge it too much because I didn't use it as long as I usually did, at least on mobile data, the way I use it, because I had the week off. But what I can expect, about 7 to maybe even 8 hours on Wi-Fi, and what I actually got was about 6 hours on mobile data. But since I was mostly at home or not far away, and not, even though I was all the time on mobile data, I would actually expect it, just from what I know, from my experience from the Snapdragon 820 with mobile data use and my drain with the worst or the weaker carrier these days, I would actually expect more like 5.5. But if you have really good connection and so on, maybe you can get 6 hours, but I would expect maybe 5.5. Standby drain was also top notch, so it actually performed better than I expected. Now, like I said, I don't have the same real-life conditions that I usually use at my workplace, so then it could have turned out noticeably weaker, but even 5 hours is easily very good. Now, I think I need to talk a little bit more about the software, since this is quite an unknown UI. First of all, let's check what we got, and I think this will be a turnoff for some. Yes, only 6.0.1 with the security update patch from November 2016, so this is not all that great. We also don't have an app drawer, even though that's not an issue for me. You could just use any other browser, and as you can see here, you have kind of this extra feature where we can see some steps and so on, some health apps. Quick settings, not here. This is a little bit something you have to get used to, because here are only the notifications, and from the bottom you have your quick settings. These are customizable though, so it's fine. And I have to say, I like the software, especially since we have this U-Touch, as you can see here. You can customize what the home button does. So double press to the app history, slide left to right to switch between the apps. As you can see here, for example, you could just switch this way between apps, which is something that I actually did not really use a lot, just because I completely forgot it and I just remembered now. So this would maybe be actually quite handy once you get used to it. Then long press and of course long touch, double tap to wake, we already talked about that. What else do we have? Of course, notification, status bar, and so on. Pretty much typical features these days. You can, of course, rearrange the quick settings. Yeah, advanced settings. So not too much, as you can see here, the quick overclock mode. But it is a solid UI, actually. The problem is just, I think you won't really get anything new from ZUK anymore. this is where it is in terms of the ROM point. But I have checked it, and what I would actually do if I would keep this, I would just install a custom ROM, because I've seen things like Lineage, or I think CyanogenSys is available or something like that, but there are custom ROMs available. And just thinking about the fact that you can get a Snapdragon 820 device with actually quite solid custom ROM support, and if you are okay with that, you could easily get past the way that it won't get updates anymore, because this way it will get. And yeah, that's why I would say, let's check the cam. As you can see here, the front cam for me is a little bit of a mystery. Why? Because as you can see here, it's not in focus from this distance, not here, and not even from the furthest with a stretched out arm. And no matter what I did, as you can see here, it's always the background which is sharp, and not me. Because I see kind of surrounding around me to see that it wants to focus or something else, but it is a fixed focus as what it looks like. And I did not get one sharp selfie, which is just weird. Maybe something is wrong from my camera standpoint, but I don't get it. And even indoors, it always favors the background. Completely off. Especially weird, since as you can check video, doesn't seem to have this issue that much, because from a normal distance, this now seems better. Still not quite right in terms of focus, because the background still seems sharper than I do, which is just very confusing. So if you maybe have this phone and you don't have this behavior, let me know, because I don't quite understand it. But otherwise, low light is actually quite decent, I would say, because it's not too grainy. It still maintains quite sharp. Autofocus is okay. So yeah, actually quite good. And as you can see here, with proper lighting indoors, you can actually get some nice pictures. Outside, the problem was, as you can see, everything was raining and we had a lot of clouds, so I didn't get the best optimal conditions, but I would still say it's an almost very good camera, because it doesn't, at the pictures right now here, look all that sharp. But I think with the right light, of course, where all cameras have better outcomes, as you can see here, it can produce some really nice sharp pictures, because colors seem mostly fine. There is one thing with a little bit white balance that I will show you a little bit later on, but it is a solid cam. Autofocus sometimes was a little bit dumb, something you will see also on video. But if you have the time, and also with HDR, which actually, as you can see here, improves, because if you look at the clouds, now they are actually more visible. So HDR, especially with HDR Auto, I would just leave it on all the time. As you can see here, this is what I meant. So the white balance is a little bit off with a little bit of a shift, but otherwise it's fine. Also 4K, actually surprisingly detailed and sharp, also smooth. Okay, as you can see here, with faster movement, something which is a little bit more apparent is artifacting. You will see this a little bit more, as you can see. But yeah, the autofocus is reliable if you have something properly where it knows what to do. But you will see the artifacting going on, of course. Autofocus is actually quite subtle. It actually seems also, for me, I'm not quite sure, I didn't really check, to be honest, if it has OIS or something like that, but as you can see, this actually looks quite stabilized. Definitely not very shaky. So what else? As you can see, and I say this so many times, I've noticed, here is where you just notice that it doesn't really get to the autofocus right. Because to me it seems like you have to make a quick movement so it actually knows that it should focus. With slower movements it wasn't all that visible. 1080p looks okay, of course not nearly as sharp as 1080p, but therefore no artifacting. Autofocus is a little bit more pumping, a little bit more nervous, but I'd say this is already good enough. And that's why I would say let's get to the summary, which I will just do out of my head with the same categories than usually though. Build quality, actually really good, and I would almost go to a grade if it would just crackle sometimes on really hard banding, which is something you won't really do anyways. Design, a little bit unique in-hand feel, but a really nice, very grippy one. Also quite compact, easy in-hand use, so also very good here. Fingerprint reader, I would say, is really good. Not quite very good. We have faster ones, but it's totally reliable, which is important. The display, very good, because sharp, 1080p AMOLED, still great colors, contrast and so on. The speaker, almost good, I would say. It's okay. Also the headphone jack, okay. Performance, I would really like to give it a very good, but there are two things why I won't do that. Two reasons. The one is that the scrolling was a little bit inconsistent with this odd sensitivity, and that we had a little bit more micro lag than we do on more like optimized phones of 2017. But it's a minor thing, and if you use a custom ROM, I think this will be completely gone, and then easily very good, I think. Battery life, I would also say very good from what I've seen. I'm actually closer to a great, but like I said, I don't have all the same conditions and I can't probably prove it, so maybe a revisit at some point if that would be necessary. What else? Software, I actually really like it. It's not that far off from a stock Android experience because it behaves normally. It's not a too heavy skin. You have some nice features, especially the button placement and so on. You don't get any extra sorts of features, which are also not present, for example, like waterproofness and so on. But otherwise, it's totally fine. It gets the job done. But I think anyone who would buy this now should just stick with custom ROMs. I think you work out better than camera. Like I said, the front camera is completely off. Kind of totally off. I don't get that fact. The main camera is quite good. Almost, I would say, very good. So really good for sure. Video was actually very nice. So overall, $280, 240 euros. What's my opinion? This is a 2016 flagship, and this now kind of opens the question for so many people. Should I get a 2016 flagship or a 2017 mid-ranger? And in this case, I would actually maybe favor the 2016 flagship, because on a performance standpoint, on a battery life standpoint, it's really good. Great display, maybe not the best speaker anymore and so on. So it definitely holds up very well. But I'm not quite sure if I can fully recommend it, because I think it actually seems to support band 20, which is important for a few countries. And the value, I don't know, maybe it's in different stores also a little bit different price point, but 280 for what you get seems almost a little bit too much. Of course, you have to consider this is the 128 gigabyte version. Usually on most phones of 2016, if you buy a mid-ranger, are more like 32 gigabytes. I don't think in most cases you get even 64. So value is not bad, but it's just something you have to decide. And I don't really want to put too much of my subjective opinion anymore in it. You have seen all the objective parts. 240 euros for what you get seems absolutely reasonable if you like to import it. But these days, with mid-ranges and even flagships fell down so much in terms of price, with also good specs, it's not maybe all that appealing, because I've heard so many great things about it in terms of value, but I see definitely very good value. If it's great, I don't really know. There's nothing really wrong with this one. I like it a lot. But there is this a little bit, because I'm usually not the biggest fan of older flagships, and I kind of prefer the newer mid-ranges, which is a thing in my head. But yeah, let me know just what you think later on in the comments. And if you liked it, you know what to do. And otherwise, the video is way longer than I expected it to be, but yeah, it is what it is. Until next time.